Views expressed by Camaplan podcast guests may not reflect those of Camaplan. Camaplan does not guarantee the accuracy of information provided by guests, nor does it endorse or recommend any individual or organization. Camaplan is not an investment advisor, CPA, realtor, or attorney. You are encouraged to conduct your own due diligence before making investment choices. For any tax, legal, accounting, investment, or other questions, please consult a specialist. Hi, I'm Michael Duncan, and welcome back to The Road to Financial Freedom. This podcast is brought to you by Camaplan, a self-directed IRA administrator focused on educating investors on how to grow retirement savings faster through alternative investments. In each episode, we're going to take an in-depth look at the many roads taken to financial freedom and how they differ for each of our guests. Our goal is to help the listeners learn how they can achieve their own financial freedom through the experience and stories of experts that have done just that. Today's guest is the CEO of Norwood Energy Corp, where he handles the day-to-day operations and evaluations of oil and gas prospects and minerals. He's worked on projects such as the Oklahoma Scoop and Stack basins and active areas around Texas, Kansas, and Louisiana. His specialty is recognizing opportunity hotspots in undiscovered areas of the country where they can operate significantly below what it costs the oil giants you're familiar with, such as Exxon or Chevron. I am very excited today to welcome Grant Norwood to the show. Grant, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks for coming on. I was telling you beforehand, I'm really excited to kind of dive into some of this. I was really intrigued when I saw that, you're the CEO of an energy corporation, and I'm excited to learn about how you got there and why you chose, I guess, this kind of work in this field.
Yeah. Growing up in Texas, it's all around you and stuff. So there was always that kind of curiosity, like, how does it all work? What does it do? Is it just so we can fill up our cars? And then as I kind of came of age, had friends in it, a lot of family friends in it, had some family that had been in it, in and out, and off and on. And I was able to find someone that's willing to mentor me through one specific part of the business. And through doing that is just like a job. We all need a job. We aren't sure as young people what we're going to do with our lives. I really found out that I liked it and I wanted to be an operator and I wanted to run the whole show. But the thing about oil and gas is there's so many different disciplines, and mastering one will get you a job. But like most people, you don't have much when you're trying to start out and build an organization. So kind of what I spent years doing is I would learn one discipline for 6 months to a year, and I'd hop around. So I was never working for anyone for more than a year at most. And I was completely forward with them. I wouldn't have hired me. I'd come in and say, hey, I want an entry-level position. So start learning how to do this. I'm looking for employment for 6 months to a year. Here are my skills. And usually, the first thing I really got proficient with was land and title. That's a very essential role in the oil and gas industry. Because if you don't have leases, you don't lease the right person, you don't know how to mind your right of ways and other, I guess, avenues, people, entities and industries that use that same ground, whether it's utilities, railroad, wind, solar, all those things. If you don't know how to work with those people on the same ground, then y'all aren't going to get along together. And you may just not even have the right to it, but have spent a lot of money thinking you did. So doing that and being so good at it, a lot of companies didn't have the budget to have one of those professionals in-house, so they usually contract them. So when I come to you kind of wanting to be a geotech, just somebody that does all the grunt work for a geologist, but I've got land and title expertise, well, yeah, we'll take you on. And half my time, they would just want to use me for my land background. And then I'd get a little bit more familiar with the new side of the industry. And I did that, and it kind of gave me a little bit of a rounding, so I was well-rounded enough to wear all the hats until we had revenue. And then I could start filling those roles and had the funds to do it. So I'm not saying that's going to work with everybody and everything or every industry. But in my industry, where most people expect to make six figures out of the gate, and when you're just an entrepreneur with a dream, that's hard to do. So it took several years to launch, but that's really from start to finish. How did I get to where I am? And over the time period I did, that's really what allowed me to do so, is just learning how to do enough by myself, starting small. And I think just because of how lucrative my industry is, it doesn't take years and years and years if you can just get the first one off the ground and it do well. Because the
That's
second one, you don't do it all by yourself. That's
it's really interesting. I can't say I expected out of the gate for you to say I wouldn't have hired me. I mean, I haven't spoken to many people that are just like, yeah, I spent 6 months at a bunch of different companies.
yeah.
But like logically, it makes sense because there are so many different parts to that industry. And did you take, other than just learning the general, the general ideas of each of those industries, of each of those focuses, were you able to take things away from those companies about the way that you wanted to run your company, other than the fact that you wouldn't have hired yourself?
Well, I wouldn't have hired myself. If you come to me and ask for a job, I mean, one of my things is, how long would I get you if I hire you? And if it's under 10 years, I'm not interested. It's too hard to find top talent, and you don't want to help your top talent get better and then lose them. And I just don't like, getting used to somebody and then seeing them go, because I'm usually really great friends with anybody who's ever worked here, still does. So that's why I wouldn't have hired myself. But as far as what I took away from them, nobody's perfect. No company's perfect. We all have flaws. And it's kind of like you're not self-aware. Sometimes you got food on your face and somebody's got to point at it, you didn't match today, whatever. We don't all have an eye for fashion. Everybody's really good at what they're really good at, and then they fail at other things. So when I would get in there, I would kind of take notes on what was good, what was bad, where they struggled, and kind of just kept a mental log of it. And I think that I've kind of taken all the good and I've made myself aware of what other people failed to realize. And I think that's definitely helped. We are far from perfect, but there's a lot of mistakes that others make that we don't, because I watch them make them. So that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I wouldn't have hired me because I'm only going to be there to get what I need.
Yeah.
And usually when somebody hires an employee, they're there to get what they need out of the employee. But I was honest with all of them. Don't know that they believe me, because everybody's got that dream. Everybody that, starts telling you all their plans, you're just like, sure. So I don't know that they believed it, but,
at least they weren't surprised when you left after 6 months.
Yeah, well, they were surprised, but how mad can you be if you're like, hey, just warning you? So whether they believed it or not, that's not the way it went.
So you made a specific point of mentioning that, you can operate in ways that are different from the giants of the industry.
Mm-hmm.
How is that? What is different about your company compared to those, I guess, other than just size?
In those companies, even the executives they don't have total control. And even their executives aren't aware of all the top to bottom positions. They review a lot of the numbers. They're aware in a general fashion of how a lot of this stuff works, but how it works generally and then how it works actually day to day, delays, all the stuff, they're just not in those trenches and haven't ever been. If you get the right education, you train under the right people, and you never have to start down low to get real high. You've never been down there, so you just really can't relate. But I really think like we aren't driven by anybody but our own ideas and philosophies. We don't need anyone's approval. And we don't have to get anybody to approve of where we want to operate. So many people rely on, public opinion. If the world hates your company, they're not going to buy your stock. They'll probably short it. We don't really have any of that. So just being private, being smaller, knowing everybody. I know everybody's birth date, kind of car they drive, how many kids they have, all that stuff. So we're all real close. And then everybody's opinion matters. And kind of taking everybody's best thinking, throwing it out on the table and sifting through it is how we make our decisions on our projects. And I think that makes our projects more efficient, because I don't think these big companies care what the guys on the floor think. I don't even think they know each other. So just being connected, it just, everybody's aware. And I think the awareness at the top is lacking because they won't communicate with the bottom. And then It's like telephone when you're in grade school. Sally's wearing blue pants. By the time Billy's got a blue hat, just, by the time you pass it around and everybody regurgitates it, it's not the same.
No, it's not.
Even when they copy and paste it, the context they put about what they're copying and pasting alters the meaning. So that's what I'd say helps us from a small to a big company comparison. Now, obviously, we don't have their endless budgets, but measure our profitability to their profitability, and you won't need my explanation, but that's how it happens.
So speaking of profitability, with the way the world is kind of changing in a lot of ways, obviously with green initiatives and just the general reluctance to rely as much on fossil fuels as we have in the past, how is it that oil is still lucrative and you can look forward and not be worried, I guess, about what might come of that?
Well, I think as far as energy goes, there's other options. But since people don't use all those options, you don't realize how unreliable those options are. I mean, right now it's kind of in vogue, but not everybody can afford it. But if everybody tried to afford it or set the money aside to it, there wouldn't be the resources to back it up. And even what resources there are, it still stems from oil and gas. I mean, especially in the wintertime, you got to think, when it's cloud cover, it's raining, snowing, snow on the solar panels, they're not generating electricity, and what they generate wouldn't be enough if it was middle of the summer. In certain states, it might make up 20-25% of the energy mix. But then you have states that, they don't have the transmission to get it to them. So you can't just pick up and move a windmill. You can't just pick up and move a solar panel. And those things, they take a long time to construct. They pay for themselves about the time that they need to be replaced. So there's no profitability in it. They're trading tax credits. So all of us are paying more taxes to support a dream that's inefficient and doesn't work. And it's okay with me, because all the oil it takes to build that windmill is a net loss of energy. So that makes my demand go up. And I honestly hope they crack the code. We've got, if we're honest with ourselves, and reserves that are actually producible, we've got about 60 years worth of recoverable oil at the rate we're going. And then here's another thing. Yeah, they're making leaps and bounds. They're throwing billions of dollars at it. And, how long before those subsidies are not financially feasible for the government? I don't know. But what I do know is if we don't find alternatives, we're not going to have enough energy. And I think it's kind of actually wasteful to use oil and gas where it's not needed, given the amount we have left. So I'm actually for an all-in energy strategy. It takes oil and gas to make plastics, disposables, medicines, fabrications. Everything we have might not be necessarily, if it's not directly oil, it's created by it. Not just how it gets to you, your fertilizers, all your food, all that stuff. That really does not matter. You can't find something that it's not in the supply chain or the supply itself. Especially plastics, handhelds, TVs, all the technology, all that stuff. why did we have such a big car shortage the last couple of years? We don't have enough helium. We can't make the semiconductors. So and that was actually a lot from a lot of regulations in the biggest helium field in the country in southeast or southwest Kansas. So I'm not worried at all. Demand went up 2.5 million barrels last year. It's going up 1.5 million barrels this year, maybe a little bit more. Through COVID, it dropped too. It's already doubled what it dropped after it got back to where it was. I mean, in 10 years, we'll be consuming 15 million barrels more than we're consuming today. And that's out of the 100 million barrels that we took since the 30s to get to. If this was doing anything, demand would stay flat.
Yeah.
If not drop. It's going up. So, I mean, that's why you can't be too disappointed as an oil man that all these other avenues are coming about. Because if you are an oil man, you do pay attention, and you know how hard it is to find economic reserves. You'll know that our kids might be okay, but their kids won't.
Yeah.
We won't have the energy we need, and nobody wants to be plunged back into the dark ages. And it sounds kind of far-fetched, but if you do a little bit of digging in, we're going, okay, well, what all are our alternatives? How will we get our medicines? How will the machines that we give us our procedures and all the luxuries we enjoy today, how will we do that without oil and gas? And nothing available now will do so. So we can't survive off of 20%. And that's only in a few states that are covered in windmills. I don't know where else they're going to put them. We've got to have a place to live too. So anyways, I'm not worried about it. That was a long-winded, drawn-out answer, but I kind of wanted to put it into perspective.
No, I enjoyed the perspective. I mean, really what it sounded like, if I were to sum it up, is that worst case scenario is a rising tide lift all ships. Like, right. I mean, right. Because you're right. Like, the reality is eventually, like, there's a finite amount of it. You know, that's what the whole concern to begin with is. So why would you not want to see other things be formed that could help?
I mean, keep those we make enough money at $40 and $50 oil that as long as you're not terribly greedy, you don't need $75 like we are today. So we could take a hit for a few years to know we have a 150-year supply until we find an alternative for all the luxuries that oil gives us. Then we need to make that oil last as long as we can and not burn it up in the cars, or use it to heat and cool our homes if we don't have to.
Yeah.
Right now we have to. So I hope that kind of some of this renewable stuff will give us more time to figure out other alternatives for the essentials that we get from oil and gas.
So speaking of the general price of oil, what does it mean when the price of oil is negative?
Man, that was just a paper error with trading. Basically, they were having contracts expire, nobody to take delivery of stuff. So, everybody was just trying to push them. So they went negative, and the few people that could pick them up, they got them for a negative price, but it was only a couple of hours. And it made headlines for going on 3 years now.
Yep.
But, it was a first time event. I doubt it happens again, but, never say never. It's not outside of the realm of possibility. It's just unlikely.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, the price is only somewhat supply and demand. A lot of it's just the interpretation of things going on in the world, and they bid the prices way up or they bid them way down.
Yeah.
And then eventually fundamentals kind of kick back in when extreme times happen, but a lot of it's just trying to, play the future out.
Yeah, and God knows the last couple of years. Last couple of years have been anything but normal to begin with. So
absolutely
not shocked that happened during that period of time. So getting back to, I guess, what the show is aimed toward, how can passive investors get involved with what you're doing? Like, why, if I was a billionaire and I was looking to use my self-directed IRA and I wanted to invest with you guys, like, how does that happen and why? Why should they?
Well, how does it happen? I guess so. A company like mine finds a project that's a little bit more capital intensive than they're ready to shell out at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't want to miss out on it. So they take what they can, and then they let others come in and join them. There's a lot of companies that do that. I'm actually wanting to put out a training course on how to navigate those waters, because a good oil deal is like buying Bitcoin 10 years ago. A
A
bad
dream.
oil deal is like buying Bitcoin a few months ago. Uh, or
Very
let's
true.
call it like 8 months ago when it was at 60, and we see where it is today.
Yeah.
So it's something that I think there should be more material on, so you know how to differentiate a good deal and a bad deal. But there's opportunities around. It sounds like just because you haven't heard of it, there's like a whole world inside of our world that all these opportunities go around. And if you know what you're looking at, you can go, oh, this is a good one, this is a bad one. But really, if you're new to it, doing them educates you. If you don't have a consultant or somebody like me, doing them is your best education. So really just if you have a good feeling about the person, you trust what they're saying, you check some references, that's about as good as it gets until you kind of can evaluate stuff. And it's just like anything else. If you never looked at real estate and kind of cap rates and stuff like that, how do you know if that one's good? You know,
Yeah.
you get involved, you talk to some people. Everybody's going to call someone who's willing to let them in, show them the ropes. And from there, you kind of get familiar with it. But yeah, if you were to send me an email and ask to see what we're working on at this moment, I'd send it to you. And if I'm not available, there's plenty on my team that would contact you. But if you liked it, you could join in. I send out weekly emails, and I try to explain every little thing I can.
Yeah.
So if you've been in a few of my deals, you're like trying to search for the meat and potatoes of it. But I know some people are new, so I want you to feel like you could do this without me by the time you get through a project.
Hmm.
In reality, you could. I just feel like,
Hmm.
it's more than it looks like. But
Yeah.
I try to shield everybody from the turbulence that comes along with the industry. I try to find deals that have low operating costs, low failure rates, and stuff like that, because it can be treacherous. But there's also, I don't know, if you're not chasing, I mean, whales, if you will, if you're not elephant hunting, then it goes really smooth. It's when you really want to chase some mega returns that are unheard of or not commonly heard of, that you have a higher fail rate. So, I would say don't look for things that have more than a 3 to 8x. If you start looking at 10 plus X's, there's just more risk. And if you're fine with the risk, jump right in. But if you're happy with like 3 to 8x in a fair amount of time, then that's your starting point. And I mean, reach out. There's times I get busy, but I'll
Mm-hmm.
look at anything for anybody, just because I want the name or the industry to have the best name it can. So if I can help steer you in the right direction, mitigate a loss, any of that, just say hello.
Without giving too much away from the course that you're thinking of making, are there any other red flags that you kind of look for when you're looking at these types of deals? Like obviously you mentioned above the 8x, but is there anything else that's just kind of immediate turnoffs that are saying this is something I
Well,
would be very wary of?
I mean, I've spent most of my life trying to learn what I have, so I can't just like hand you all that fast. Um, and I hate to say that you won't slowly figure it out, but I don't just have that one little thing that runs you away from it. Because half of me wants to say, don't do a one well drilling program because it's all on one thing,
Mm-hmm.
unless it looks like this.
Yeah.
So there are those exceptions to everything, but generally speaking, if you invest in a one well program, there's no guarantee that's going to work out under um, even under good circumstances. But if you can stand an 80% success rate, and that's kind of after you factor in the geology, then jump right in. But I would like people on their first deal to get some wins under their belt. Production deals are nice if the syndicator hasn't marked it up, and really the syndicator can mark it up if he seeks out a good enough of an opportunity. So just kind of look for what liabilities come with it. Make sure the company is taking those on. They rarely come up, but more so than like personal liability, what liabilities do the field come with? So if you're going to get the safest thing you can possibly participate in, which is going to be an existing field, how many wells are producing out of how many? Let's say it's 50. Let's say 20 of them are producing. That's not a problem. But I would ask the operator or the syndicator, can you tell me how many wells have casing leaks? If I can leave you with anything, and you're going to get into this, ask how many wells have casing leaks. Those are hard to fix. And eventually the state makes you plug the well because you're not going to do anything with it. They'll let you leave it down for 10 years. After that 10-year mark, you've either got to produce it or plug it. How far into it is it if it's got a casing leak? Because there's 20 wells online and 10 are easy fixes, and that doubles your production, and you can sell it and walk away with 3-4 times your money. You don't care if you've got 8 more years on that casing leak. But let's say it's a $2 million project and 500,000 is going to fix the field. Do you really want the state to come bark at you next week and 10% of your budget goes to fixing something that doesn't help your cash flow? So in production deals, how many casing leaks?
I love that. I mean, I don't know what a casing leak is, but
okay. Basically, you drill the hole.
Okay.
And you determine it's good. You put pipe in the hole, and you pour cement down the pipe, and it comes up the backside. There's I'd say sometimes, especially in older fields, there's a zone that has corrosive liquids in it. It eventually eats through that cement. It eventually eats through that pipe. And then your great and wonderful oil well producing, those fluids start dropping down from that casing leak. And then it kind of creates an unhealthy environment to where that production's blocked by that fluid. And a lot of times it's brine, but there's some kind of corrosive agent in it. And that's how it got there. That brine sits on top and it's steadily dropping. So then like your flow stops.
Yeah.
Not the end of the world. If you've got 50 wells, and that's like when these problems first start to happen, and you lose 10 of them, okay, that's not the end of the world. You still have the other 40 at that point. And you've got 10 years to worry about it. And you can fix those. Just the repair job only works about half the time. And that's more risk than I like to take on. So a little bit of education, oil and gas, but casing leak is basically the casing of the well, which is pipe and cement, give way to a corrosive zone that falls down on your production and makes it cease. So that's that. So production deals, casing leaks, drilling deals, getting something with 2 to 4 or 5 wells at the max. Don't get in a 10+ well deal. Cap it at 5. These things take time. None of this stuff happens overnight. And for a new person, they want results early enough to determine if this is worthwhile or not. You've been doing this 4 or 5 years and you're okay with the project having a development time that's well over a year, then okay, you can do those. But if you're thinking you're going to jump in and start getting checks in 3 months, well, you can if it's a 2-3 well deal. But if it's a 10 well deal, there's cycles through the year that are hard to work under. Winter is a big one. Winter is very hard on equipment. Like right now, today in Kansas, the drilling rig's fine because it was running before it fell below 0 up in northwest Kansas. But I had a well being worked on, and that takes a completion rig. Well, their diesel's gelled up. They can't start it because it's below 0 up there. So whenever you get in these long or multi well deals, you think, okay, well, they can knock out a well every month and a half. And then difficult times of the year come up. And then that just delays it 3 or 4 months. Then getting back started again, things need to be refurbished and replaced because they weren't worked on immediately after they were started. My 2 cents, no more than 5 wells in your first deal. Not 1, but not more than 5.
I like that. I like, even if it's just a very general kind of basis, like I learned a lot right there. And I feel like
right. Well,
if I was to get started, I could at least know where to look.
Well, one of the companies I worked for, and when I was learning how to fundraise, 10 well deal, same thing kind of happened. The first 3 wells kicked, but almost paid for all 10.
Mm-hmm.
Then the next one's drug on. And then by the time they drug on, sometimes your vendors have moved around and found a better place to work in. They hadn't returned yet. And you're going, okay, well, now where's the help that I was going to have finish this project? Because it's like you kind of set it all out, you get bids, you make sure you can accomplish it before you get started. And when you have a big delay, the service company's got to keep the lights on, so they go find work, more hospitable clients. And they'll eventually get back 6 months from now.
Yeah.
So what's your money doing over that period of time? I'm sitting there.
Not doing much.
So yeah, kind of a well thought out plan of execution. And it's easy to figure that out. Just, it's a company my size, even I'm not going to offer anything that's more than 5 wells.
I like it. Well, finally, before we get you out of here, I have one final question I like to ask this to all my guests, and that's simply, what does financial freedom mean to you?
Means a lot less stress in life. I guess financial freedom, at least me as a business owner, my stresses are different.
Yeah.
It's not financial. I mean, I might stress about the free time that I don't get. But really it's just comfort. It's like comfort, to get here, I had to worry about how to fill up my car. Now everybody here has a gas card. It's, I don't know. It's a warm feeling because I think I'm there. So that was a kind of tough question for me to answer because I hadn't thought about it in a while because everything's been going so well.
That's probably why you're a good person to answer it. I mean, it's something.
I guess you stop thinking about it. That's the thing. You don't know how to answer the question because it left you.
Yep. It's either you're there and you're constantly thinking, or you're not there and you're constantly thinking about it, or once you get there, you probably haven't thought about it in a while. Yeah,
well, it just allows you to start optimizing things because you're not worried about how you're going to pay for them.
Yeah.
You're just worried about what's the most convenient. Conveniency becomes your worry.
I like that.
Because you can do whatever you want and you want to be able to do as much as you can. So the more convenient and less time it takes to get to do those things becomes your new focus.
Absolutely. I think that was very well said.
Thank you.
Well, Grant, thank you so much for coming on. I had a wonderful time talking to you. I feel like I learned a lot in this conversation, and I know my listeners are going to feel the same. Please tell the listeners where they can find you, how to contact you, plug whatever you'd like. I
mean, go to the website. Obviously, that's probably the easiest way. But if you're big on Instagram, we take a lot of time to make our Instagram informative. And there's a lot of real life footage from the field that we do all of ourselves, as well as YouTube, LinkedIn. Those are all, I guess, kind of fun. So if you just want more information, go to the website and reach out, and we'll be happy to work with you.
As always, thanks for listening to The Road to Financial Freedom. If you enjoyed this show, please support the podcast by remembering to rate, review, and subscribe. You can keep up to date with us on Facebook or Instagram at The Road to Financial Freedom Pod. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. If you like what you're hearing on The Road to Financial Freedom and want to learn more about self-directed IRAs and 401ks, click the link in the description to download a free toolkit with everything you need to get started.